My topic with this broadcast is Revelation predicts the United States in prophecy. Yes, my friend, Revelation describes the rise of America. In 1492, Columbus sailed from Europe to the New World. Many followed his path, also looking for riches and new opportunities. A small group arrived off the shore of Massachusetts in November 1620, and they came seeking something they could not find in the old world, freedom of conscience. Whenever the state seeks to enforce religious beliefs on its citizens, persecution results. The Pilgrims found this to be painfully true in England and later in Holland, and sought freedom on the shores of America. The colony founded by the Pilgrims attracted others seeking relief from the fines, imprisonments and tortures of the old world monarchies. Eventually, as many as 20,000 Puritans inhabited Plymouth Colony and the areas around it. But the idea of complete religious freedom was hard to grasp. I'm now quoting from the book Martin, Volume 5, page 297. Very few, even of the foremost thinkers and moralists of the 17th century, had any just conception of the grand principle, the outgrowth of the New Testament, which acknowledged God as the sole judge of human faith. A kind of state church was formed, and all the people were required to support the clergy. The magistrates were authorized to suppress heresy. That means anything that disagreed with the doctrines the Puritans held. Roger Williams immigrated to Plymouth 11 years after it had become a colony. He came with the conviction that God had more things to reveal from his word, and that the Reformation was to be continued. But expressing these views brought on him the charge of heresy, and he was banished from Plymouth. Alone in the woods in the middle of winter, he finally found refuge with a tribe of Native Americans that he had earlier befriended. Eventually he found his way to the coast near Narragansett Bay, and he started a new colony, guided for the first time by a new fundamental principle. Every man should have liberty to worship God according to the light of his own conscience. The little state of Rhode Island, the smallest in what was to become the United States of America, developed a principle that would eventually find its way into the Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Now, does the Bible, from which this principle was derived, predict the rise and future of the nation that for hundreds of years had been a refuge for those seeking the freedom to worship according to conscience? Does it predict a time when that principle will eventually be replaced with the same principle of the church and state that ruled Europe through the Dark Ages? Friend, if it's in the Bible, I believe it. If it disagrees with the Bible, it is not for me. In Revelation 13, a new power is described. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. So in other words, friend, this is another beast, distinct from the first beast mentioned in the first 10 verses. Do you remember what does a beast represent in prophecy according to the Bible? Revelation 7 verse 23, thus he said, the 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth. So in Bible prophecy, a beast represents a kingdom or political power. Beasts represent nations. They represent empires. You will also remember what does water represent in Bible prophecy. Revelation 17 verse 15, and he said to me, the waters which you saw are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. So water represents peoples. Now when a beast comes up out of water, a kingdom comes up in a populated area of the world amidst war and strife. In Revelation 13:11, another beast comes up out of the earth. This one does not come up out of the sea. Now, there are 3 questions we need to ask about this new beast that we are studying today. Some important and very significant questions. Number 1, where does this power arise? Revelation 13:11, then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth. Now, my friend, if the sea represents a populated area, the opposite of the sea, the earth, would represent a sparsely populated area. That makes sense, correct, my friend? The first beast of Revelation 13 rose up out of the sea. And this new beast or nation comes up out of the earth, or a relatively unpopulated area compared to the nations of Europe. The beast arises in some area of the world that was previously unsettled by nations previously mentioned in prophecy. Number 2. When does this power arise? Now we read that text, "He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity." Now the second beast in Revelation 13 arises at the same time that the first beast is going into captivity. And we studied earlier that the first beast represents papal Rome. The first beast in Revelation 13 would get its authority from the dragon, pagan Rome. The papacy did that, correct. Now the first beast would be a worldwide system of worship, and the papacy was. The first beast would claim that its priests had the authority to forgive sins, as the papacy does. It would reign for 1,260 years, and historically, the papacy fits this picture exactly. Although the Bishop of Rome existed previously, his supreme reign began in 538 AD. The papacy was to rule for 1,260 years according to the prophecy of Revelation 13. And in 1798, 1,260 years after AD 538, Berthier, the French general sent by Napoleon, took the Pope of Rome captive. Revelation 13 verse 10 says that the first beast, the papacy, would go into captivity, and it did in 1798. Now the second beast in Revelation 13 would be rising in a previously unknown area of the world around the time of the first beast, the papacy, went into captivity, or around 1798. Now Bible students for decades have seen the unique fulfillment of this prophecy in the United States. Number 3. How does this power arise? Revelation 13:11. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. Now G.A. Townsend, in his book The New World Compared to the Old, page 653, says about the rise of America the following: "The mystery of her coming forth from vacancy, like a silent seed we grew into an empire." It came up out of the earth like a silent seed, my friend. What an apt description. A writer in the 1800s, Uriah Smith, from his book Daniel and the Revelation, page 578, says, "Emerging amidst the silence of the earth, adding daily to its power and strength." Another distinguishing characteristic is that the beast has 2 horns like a lamb. Now these horns also do not have crowns on them, like the first beast. Crowns indicate kingly authority. Now the absence of crowns indicates freedom. The second beast's power does not come from a king. It has 2 horns, a democratic republican form of government. It has 2 horns, 2 external principles it derives its power from. The Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor is a symbol of the principles of freedom of conscience that has long been an ideal of citizens of the United States. But the scene changes. Revelation 13:11 reveals a change in the character of this beast. And I now read from Revelation 13, verses 11 to 14. "Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon." So my friend, he speaks like a dragon. Ultimately, someday, religious freedom will be removed.